Thrall used to be my favorite WarCraft character at the very beginning, when I was originally playing WarCraft 3, when I was pretty much a kid. Pretty vanilla, I know, but that's most of my tastes in most things. Pretty basic. And while I diversified a lot since then, I still do like Thrall. The human-raised orc, a member of a superficially monstrous race who rises out of his beginnings, grows to become something more and to pull his people not just out of a depressive malaise, but out of being used by demons. He redeems his people and leads them to become better. Until, well, writers need to write another expansion when orcs do something stupid and cause another unnecessary war. But whether you like Thrall or not, you cannot deny he was a pivotal character in the setting, who helped shape it into what it is now. And today we're here to answer a simple question. What if he is removed from this equation? If this is your first video, this is a new series I'm doing on the channel, and it's called simply What If? In this series I look at potential alternate scenarios that could have transpired in the history of Azeroth and consider realistically what would have happened had things gone differently. The Bronze Dragonflight tells us that any slightest change would either cause the Burning Legion or the Old Gods to win and destroy Azeroth, or the timeline would simply crumble. But on this channel we believe that is a boring answer, and we are analyzing the situation in depth. Consider motivations of characters both directly involved in the scenario and those more distantly conducting their own schemes, and think if that really would always cause the end of the world. Is Thrall's premature death going to be the doomsday? Let's see. Escape from Durnholde is another classic Caverns of Time dungeon from the Burning Crusade, and in it we are tasked with protecting Thrall during his fated escape from Edelas Blackmore's internment camp. What normally happens in the timeline is that Thrall escapes by himself, finds Taretha in Tarren Mill, and then escapes into the wilds, where he eventually battles Orgrim Doomhammer and becomes the warchief of the Horde, leading it to victory on Mount Hyjal and saving Azeroth. In the dungeon, the Infinite Dragonflight invades and attempts to kill him, but in these scenarios we are not going to consider out-of-timeline elements, unless they are crucial to the original topic. What if, for whatever reason, Thrall never makes it out? Perhaps he dies in a gladiatorial fight. Perhaps Blackmore's thugs manage to actually kill him during his escape. However we arrive here, Thrall is now dead and has never left Durnholde Keep. So surely this means that everyone dies again, right? Well, not necessarily. There is someone else we have to consider if we're talking about the Horde. A man who would be dead in the original timeline, but not so much here. And we are talking about Orgrim Doomhammer. At this point in time, Orgrim Doomhammer is still considered warchief of the Horde, though he's hardly using the title. He's living as a hermit in the wilderness of Lordaeron, barely avoiding the lethargy that befell most of the orcs. Though he's losing hope in any future for himself or his people, someone arrives to spur him to action once more. A strange prophet, cloaked in raven feathers, arrives and tells him he must lead his people across the sea to the forgotten lands of Kalimdor. With no Thrall to lead the Horde in this timeline, the reborn Medivh sees Orgrim as the orc's best chance to redeem his people. And though Doomhammer was about to give up, if he sees a new chance for a future, much like he did with Thrall, he will try to achieve it. Bolstered once again, Orgrim achieves much of what Thrall did in the original timeline. He frees many clans from the internment camps, including Grommash Hellscream, and organizes a new army. Though news of the Horde reorganizing stir the human kingdoms, before long he steals the fleet and sails west. On the way, he frees the jungle trolls, and together they make a landfall on the shores of Kalimdor. Here Orgrim's character will start really changing things. Remember those pictures of Tauren in the Warcraft 3 alpha, where they were basically generic fantasy minotaurs with a ball and chain on their legs? Supposedly in this early draft, the Horde enslaved them in their conquest of Kalimdor, and perhaps This is the timeline where that happens. When Orgrim gets back in control, he falls back into his old habits. He doesn't explore the land, just look for the oracle. No, he comes to conquer. He pulls no punches when dealing with Jaina's expedition that he meets in Kalimdor. Both sides lose more soldiers before Grom, who is still more bloodthirsty than Doomhammer, gets sent off to harvest lumber in Ashenvale for their war. Here things go much like in the original timeline. Grom is lured to the demon blood well, drinks the war song to Turnfell Orc, and Orgrim eventually catches up with them. Though he made a truce with Jaina as Medivh asked them to, because he is no fool to refuse it, knowing the stakes, he doesn't trust human magics and doesn't take Jaina up on her offer to cleanse Grom. He knows Hellscream and knows what he's capable of, and decides he has been a thorn in his side one time too many. He strikes to kill, and Grom and most of the warsong are exterminated, the remains joining the burning blade as an occasional nuisance. Manoroth may be defeated in combat, but he simply reforms in the twisting nether, and the orcs remain slaves to their bloodlust. When the time for the Battle of Mount Hyjal comes, both Alliance and Horde forces are diminished by these events. Though it is easy to say here that this means that they cannot hold long enough to defend the Three once again, perhaps not every single soldier is that important. Perhaps having the Alliance and Horde there, even if diminished, is enough to hold off and give Malfurion a chance to kill Archimonde. The battle is won, and the Burning Legion is defeated, but Doomhammer's Horde does not rest easily. When the truce is over, the Horde begins cementing their conquests in Kalimdor, and they are not content with living in the Barrens. When the dust settles, Orgrim commands his soldiers to march back out into Ashenvale and fight the Night Elves for every scrap of wood. Tyrande and Malfurion defend their homeland and cannot go back to help Maiev, who dies to Illidan's forces on the Broken Isles. This is where things really start to spiral out. Without those three, Kael'thas fails more of his missions, loses more of his soldiers, and when the time comes for his rebellion, he doesn't have enough soldiers to stand up to Garithos. Kael'thas either dies in prison or in a failed attempt to escape. Meanwhile, war rages across Kalimdor, and it is hard to predict who wins an all-out war here. I am inclined to say that at the very least the Horde deals considerable damage to already weakened Ashenvale, before Tyrande perhaps invokes the Night Warrior ritual to decimate the Horde forces and defeat Doomhammer in combat. Without their war chief, the quarreling chieftains start fighting each other for domination, and the Horde splinters for an unknown period of time. Illidan, undisturbed by Maiev's or Kael'thas' forces, finishes his ritual with the Eye of Sargeras and shatters the Frozen Throne. Though the world itself suffers considerable damage and potentially millions die to his stunt, the Lich King is destroyed. The leaderless Scourge is scattered, and though many warlords attempt to take over splinter factions, such as Arthas and Lordaeron, or Dreadlord insurgents in conflict with him, or even Anubarak in Northrend, their power isn't the same anymore. Illidan returns to Outland satisfied, having done Kil'jaeden's bidding, but not content with being his slave. He keeps scheming a way to break away from him, but that becomes a whole different scenario at this point. What if Illidan succeeded at destroying the Lich King? I think this is the point where I will call it for this scenario, but we have found a future where Azeroth is still saved, even though things are different and some actors have changed. They still get more complicated and many people die, but many other opportunities open up. Would you like to see part 2, following up on where things go from here? Let me know and share this video with everyone else who enjoys these topics, and if this video gets, let's say, 1,000 views, I will make part 2. I know it's not a very high requirement, but still, that is something that I need to achieve, because it's a very tiny channel. Otherwise, if you don't want to see part 2, what other scenarios would you like to explore? Do you think anything would have gone differently? Maybe you think Doomhammer would conquer Kalimdor, or would not go to war with the Kaldorei. Let me know in the comments below, and of course don't forget to like and subscribe, and maybe check out my Ko-fi page, because every little bit helps the channel. But that is it for this video, and I'll perhaps see you next time.